Hello, everyone. I'm Carol Folt, and I am the president of the University of Southern California. Thank you for joining me today. This fall, I'm going to launch an interview series highlighting some of the remarkable members of our USC community. Just last week, I had the opportunity to sit down and talk with our new dean of Brasír School of Education, Professor Pedro Nogueira, for a discussion on the future of education in a time of COVID as part of this series. His thoughts were so topical and interesting. He is doing exactly what we're all thinking about today. So I decided to bring this to you before we formally launch this series. There'll be more to come, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you. For those of you who have not had the chance to meet Professor Pedro Nogueira, he is the new dean of the Brasír School of Education, and he's joined us just a couple of weeks ago. I have to say, what an exciting first week. That has to go into the record books. He's a sociologist, an education researcher, former public school teacher, and he has a vast experience in urban education. He focuses particularly on social, economic, and demographic factors and how they influence schools and student achievement. He joined USC from UCLA, where he was a distinguished professor of education at its Graduate School of Education. And before that, he held tenured and endowed positions at UC Berkeley, Harvard, and NYU. We are so excited to have you with us. He's taking over from a very beloved dean, Karen Gallagher, who spent 20 years as Brasír's dean and built the school into one of the top graduate schools in education in the country. Pedro is one of the nation's leading voices on education, and I am so excited to have the chance to talk about a topic that I know is at the top of mind of the national conversation today, the future of education, in particular during the COVID pandemic.
Thank you, Carol. It's such an honor to be with you and you be your first guest. I feel real privileged to be part of this conversation.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pretty exciting time to be in the field of education in general. Can you just talk to a little bit about your own thoughts? How do you have a lot of experience. You can look at this both from the near term and far term. How do you look at everything that's going on right now? What is really top of mind for you?
Well, Carol, as you know, education is finally right at the top of the news agenda. It was on the front page of all the major papers this Sunday, and it's again there this week, because they finally realized you can't restart the economy if you don't have schools open. But we haven't figured out how to open them safely. So now there's this debate going on about whether or not to open them, whether or not to require masks, how do we protect teachers and kids when we do so. And then we also know there are consequences to not opening schools. The kids who have been in isolation and the learning loss and the mental health consequences of not being in the company of their peers and with their teachers is quite serious for many children. So it's a difficult situation, and schools have not gotten a lot of guidance from either the state or the federal government during this period.
I want to come back and talk to you a minute about what it's like from the kids and the parents' perspective, but has anybody been able to get this right? I mean, you look at other countries, you hear that maybe someone's doing it better than someone else, but is there really a model for this that you can think of right now?
Yeah, we do know that in parts of Europe, for example, in Denmark and Germany, they seem to have done it right. They seem to have started schools up and it's safe. We also know there are some countries like Israel that didn't do it right, and now we're seeing an outbreak that has been tied to the way schools opened. So we should be learning from lessons from both. What seems to work in terms of best practices for opening schools and what we should avoid. So that's the good thing about our school schedule. We have the advantage of looking backwards.
Now, I know you're on lots of boards. People have been asking your opinion and help, and we've got a lot of great people at the Brasír that can help too. What do you think are the 3 to 5 most important considerations in making a decision about how and when to do this best?
Well, I think that probably the most important issue is how to do it safely. We have a number of teachers out there who are older, who are at risk, and if they contracted that illness, even if there was, I just saw a study that said, even if only 2% got the virus, and less than 0.5% died, you're still talking about over 80 people dying.
Wow.
So this is not insignificant. So we have to handle this carefully. So the risk associated with opening is definitely one factor, but then there are the issues for children if we don't open. The isolation that many kids have been under. There are a lot of kids who live in small apartments. It's cramped. There are kids who haven't had digital access because they don't have internet, they don't have devices, so they haven't been learning. That we know from the research that kids with learning disabilities and younger children need the contact of teachers to facilitate their learning. And so the longer they're not in school, the further and further behind they fall. And then there are the seniors out there, the kids who are applying to college, who are incredibly discouraged by this moment. And I think the real fear is that many of them may decide, college is not in it for them and they better go work, or who knows what they'll do. But that's a factor to be considered too, the demoralization. So there are a lot of things we have to consider here. That this pandemic has exposed the deep inequities in our society. If you have the privilege to work at home, if you have a college degree, and if you have time, then this has been a great experience. You have time to connect with your child, to do great work together, and to make this a rewarding experience. And I know there's some families that have had that. And then there are lots of people, they're working all day, they're Zooming all day, their kids are on screens all day, and it's not been great. And so we have to recognize that in a period like this, our schools play such a vital role in providing support to families and communities and support to children. And I think that's often underappreciated.
What you're saying, I think about this a lot. I worry about that lost generation, reading stories, as we all have, about countries in war, where there are whole generations of kids that got pulled out of school, and it was terrible for them. And our students these kids are feeling some of this. Some of them are probably terrified. I mean, there's much going on in their lives that makes this so important. So if you could wave a wand and say, okay, they may not get back when we want them to right now, then we better do some other things on high octane to get this reversed. What would be some of those things, or things that you in the School of Rossier and our educators need to think about, and our legislators? Where do we need to put the money to make sure that we reverse the damage before it becomes impossible to change?
So as you know, Carol, Rossier has been a leader in distance learning for some time. And schools need guidance on how to do it well. How to do it well for different populations, like English learners, for example, how to make it meaningful and interesting so it's not just listening to a teacher talk at them, how to make it interactive so that they have some engagement with their peers. And there are tools and there are models for how to do this. And Rossier is well positioned to play a role in getting that information out there to educators out there in the field. It's equally important that we help educators and parents address those social and emotional needs in kids. Kids who are, again, who've been experiencing greater depression and anxiety as a result of the pandemic. And parents are looking for guidance on what to do about their children. So I do believe Rossier is well positioned. We have a number of faculty who've already been doing webinars, myself included, on this topic. We've been called upon. My first day on the job, I also appeared on MSNBC talking about the challenge of opening school. Mm-hmm. So we know that the public is looking for good information, good guidance, and I think Rossier is certainly one place they can turn to for help.
What do you say as an experienced teacher to a little kid who's suddenly afraid to go back to school? Because I know they're out there too. What would you say to them?
Well, what I want to say is the adults are going to take care of you. We're not going to put you at risk. We're going to make sure it's safe. We're going to make sure that if you're in school, that we practice good health policy to make sure that you don't get contaminated. I want to be able to say that, but I don't know if that's true. You may have heard yesterday there was a district not far from here where the board voted not to require masks in school. every bit of guidance we've received from the CDC and others says masks are essential. So I don't know how a district could do something like that. That would invariably put many kids at risk. So the real problem here is that their fears are real. Some of them are exaggerated, but they're accentuated by the lack of reliable information.
Well, and I think forcing teachers who are probably also fearful without understanding that need to be safe is probably really contributing too. As a leader, I think you're going to have an amazing role to play right here in Los Angeles because to begin with, so many principals and superintendents right here in LA are graduates of your school. So I bet they're going to be reaching out and talking to you. I'd like to talk a little bit about that because I think that when you and I talked, when you were thinking about coming to USC, one of the things you talked about why you thought this was a time. You have many things that you could do, but you were really excited about getting right in there. Maybe not knowing where we'd be today, but right in there in a big city in education, because you thought this was one of the places that we need to make our move in the next 5 years. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and how you think that the school can play a really important role?
Yeah, as you said earlier, Karen Gallagher did a tremendous job of really building a strong school with a very strong alumni. Over 80 superintendents in the state right now, current superintendents are graduates of Rossier. And we hold very strategic positions across the state. And so that's a strong base from which to operate. It allows us to use our research to influence practice. And closing that divide between research and practice is so essential. Because here's the good news. We have research out there about how to educate all kinds of kids, from kids with dyslexia to kids with autism to English learners. You name the child, I can name a school in America that serves those kinds of kids well. What we don't know how to do is take what we know works and make sure it's available to everyone so that we are taking good practice to scale and using research to tackle some of the complex issues we face in education. The truth is that our schools are addressing so many of the most difficult issues facing our society, from poverty and homelessness to mental health challenges, and the great number of kids with learning challenges. Rossier is in a position to be influential by using our research to help the practitioners in the field and the parents figure out how best to do this important work.
You know, it's so interesting that you mentioned that research because I know that has been a really high point, and I love the way I know that Rossier faculty do research and they're sort of all the way out into the field, you know, like the doctor's bench to bedside. That has clearly been your own path, very active in research, but also very much out in the world, in the schools. And I saw that Rossier, which has been a top 10 school for quite a while, I think just this year was the number 2 in the country in research. Cited research and research grants. So that's pretty exciting, and it brings in your graduate students and your faculty. Are there particular areas of research that jump out to you already? I mean, I know you're still getting to know everybody, but where you go, wow, this is something we're really going to be able to take further.
Absolutely. I'm actually the co-PI, that's co-principal investigator with one of our star faculty, Mary Imordino Yang, who's a neuroscientist doing research on the brain and looking specifically at how mindfulness, which has now become more and more common as a way of helping people to deal with stress and manage stress, looking at how it can affect teachers and improve teacher efficacy in the classroom. We know teaching is a very stressful profession. We're studying a school. We have a grant from the Chan Zuckerberg Institute to do this research. And this has, I think, the potential to address an issue that many people across the country, even before the pandemic were aware of, which is the growing mental health challenges facing many young people. If we can help teachers to get better at responding to first signs of trouble, my belief is we'll see fewer kids who end up in crisis. And that would be a good thing for all of us.
Do you think schools can play a big role in racial justice?
I think they have to. I don't know any other institution that can or is as well positioned. Obviously, the media can play a role, and during this pandemic. I've seen some good documentaries out there that help to inform people. But what schools do is they provide that teacher who can be the mediator, who can help answer the questions, who can think about the ways in which our history has not really been presented in its full gory detail to us. We're learning some of that now, and some people are troubled by it because it's at odds with what they thought they knew about our country's history. Well, when kids are in class, they get a chance to talk about it, question it, debate it. They develop the skills that are so vital for a democracy. Think about this country and how important it is to engage in civil debate, to be able to hear a different perspective, to listen, to be able to formulate an intelligent position. If this country had citizens that could do that, we would be in a very different place than we are right now. So I think that this movement for racial justice is when schools reopen, it's going to come to our schools. And my hope is our schools are ready for the children, because the children have been watching. They've been seeing what's going on around them. They've been hearing about the protest, and they're going to come with questions, and our schools have to be ready for those questions.
Well, I'd love to hear you say that. I think we do look to our schools and to our dedicated teachers and educators to really be that hope for the future. So it brings me to an area that's also very close to my heart, and that's sustainability and climate change. I know that that's actually something that has been of interest to many people and to you. Can you tell me a little bit about how you think that fits in to education, and as we build out an education system that's preparing our country and our world for the future?
Yeah, I think by now all of us have heard of Greta Thunberg, the young Swedish girl who's become such a powerful speaker on the moral issues that climate change raises, because it's the children's future that's at stake. Many of us will be not around when the icebergs melt and the consequences of global warming and climate change really come to bear on us. So education is critical because we know that science is important. It's important for understanding the threats, but it's also important for figuring out ways to adapt, ways to address those threats. And I'm seeing kids now who are saying they want to become environmental scientists. They want to figure out, how do we manage waste more effectively? How do we make renewable energy more widely available? And they're working on that while they're still in school. And I'm seeing kids who are inspired by what they're doing because they know that what they're learning has real relevance to what's happening in their communities and in the world today. And so I think that even on an issue as big and complex as climate change, our schools are going to be an important resource for helping to prepare our children for an uncertain future.
You know, when you talk about this, and I know how much you're working to try to get rid of educational disparities and these things that are just plaguing society. You know, I used to teach elementary school kids about science at different times in my career. And what I always noticed was when they were little, many of them wanted to be scientists. They had these huge, big dreams. And I just look for a time when those second and third graders are saying the same thing when they're teenagers and high schoolers, and they're saying it in schools in every neighborhood. And I think that's a big dream for you too.
Yeah, you know, that's one of the things we know from child development. Children are naturally curious. You hang out with a 3-year-old and you get lots of questions. Why? Why do I have to eat my vegetables? They're literally asking why. What will happen if I don't? Why is the sky blue? And those questions, actually, a lot of them are rooted in science. And that's one of the reasons why, for many children, the first subject they're drawn to is science, because they're interested in animals, they're interested in the natural environment, they're interested in their body. And I think if we could tap into that curiosity and nurture it, what we would see is more children could become independently motivated learners who don't stop asking questions, but continue to pursue them and continue to seek knowledge, because when that happens, education becomes really powerful.
Well, before I get to the end and ask you a few more questions about you, what would you say to young people that want to be teachers but are afraid that the world's just not going to support it? Because you've got a school full of amazing, they're big thinkers. They want to be in education. How do we keep them involved? What do you tell them? Stick with it. What do you say?
So that's a great question. And I wish I could tell them that you'll earn a good living and you'll be able to support your family. Unfortunately, in many of our big cities, that's not the case. But I still think that we need people with intelligence and passion to go into this profession. It is one of the few professions where you can genuinely say, I'm making a difference by what I do each and every day. I know that having taught for years, I take so much pride in running into my students later on and to see them doing great things and to hear from them that their time with me played a role in the path they're on. And many teachers have had that experience. So I try to encourage students. I said, listen, it may not be the most rewarding profession, but it is a profession where you can, in fact, make a difference and where you can go home each and every day knowing that you've impacted someone in a way that will benefit them for their entire life. So that is still the case, even though too often our teachers don't get the respect or the compensation they deserve.
Well, that's another thing we have to work on.
Compensation.
Can you tell us just a little bit about you? I mean, where you grew up, your family, you know, I think everybody wants to know about you.
Well, thanks for that. I'm from New York City, originally was born and raised there. My parents are immigrants, like lots of our students at Rossier. My mother from Jamaica, father's family from Trinidad and Venezuela. Neither of my parents went to college. But they really believed in the importance of education and impressed that upon us and really encouraged us at a very young age to read. And I can't say enough. Imagine what would happen right now during this pandemic if kids were in their and maybe not in the libraries, but reading, had access to books. And my parents believed in that. And I think that that's part of the reason why, despite the obstacles we faced growing up, we were able to see education as a pathway to making a difference in our lives. And so since I've experienced that myself, that's part of what brings me to this work. I know that when we educate children, we are really preparing for the future and preparing for a better, more equitable and just future as well.
Now, there are a lot of students that'll probably come up to you and say, I want to do what you do. And you would know better than anyone else that you still didn't start off saying that you were going to become a dean of a school or any of the other things that you managed to do. What do you say to them? You know, how do they build the career that can lead them to this amazing set of experiences and true meaning and purpose?
Well, I would say it's important to try to find your passions, the things you really love doing, the things you care about, because when we apply ourselves in something we care about, we tend to do it better. At the same time, because I came from a working class background, I know that you also have to pay bills. And so you have to find a balance between the practical need to support yourself and the need to do something worthwhile and meaningful. But I don't think you have to choose one or the other. I think you can find a way to do both. But what I try to tell young people when I mentor them is don't be afraid to try things that are new, that are outside of your experience. I would have never gotten a PhD had I not had a mentor when I was in college who told me, you need to go on and get your doctorate because I see that you're inquisitive, you have this thirst for knowledge, and he encouraged me. And I think that mentorship is so critical for opening doors and opening minds.
Did Karen Gallagher give you any good advice as she was turning over the keys?
She did. She really encouraged me to reach out to my other deans. She said the other deans at USC can be a great resource, and she named people who were helpful to her, and I've already found that to be the case. And she also told me that we have a tremendous staff at Rossier, and I've been very impressed by the caliber of people here at USC virtually that I've been working with since I'm working from home so far. But eventually I'll get to see them in person.
Well, it is so great to have you here. I'm really looking forward to more conversations. In these busy days, I've been wearing this pin. It says, keep calm and fight on. It makes me smile when things get crazy. At this moment, I think we often turn to the things that are in our hearts the most important. What gives you joy?
What gives me joy? I think I get the greatest sense of joy through when I feel as though I'm having an impact on things. I just got news today that an article I'd written won an award, and it was an article about school integration. And in the article, I talked about the fact that schools have become less integrated over the last 20, 30 years. And then I reflected on my own experience having attended integrated schools and how I felt I benefited. And I was very encouraged to see that it got recognized, and not because for the recognition, but because hopefully it means people read it, that it gets out there. Because as an academic, sometimes, we get satisfied with reading and speaking to very, very small audiences. And I've always aspired to aim higher than that. I want to do work that's influential, that can have an impact on the world around us. And that was what brings me a sense of joy, is knowing that when I'm doing something that is really at the benefit of others.
Well, thank you very much. It's wonderful having you here. It's great to invite everybody into our conversation, and look forward to having many more.
Thank you, Carol. It's great to be with you. Fight on.
Great. Thank you.